The palace glittered with celebration. 4 days after Esther was crowned, music echoed through golden corridors. Musicians played harps and flutes beneath high-painted ceilings. Servants hurried across marble floors carrying trays of fruit, sweet cakes, and sparkling wine. The empire rejoiced. A new queen had been chosen. Esther now slept in chambers draped with silk. Lanterns glowed softly at her bedside. Perfume scented the air. Fine carpets cushioned every step. But when night fell and the palace grew quiet, Esther often stood alone by the tall arched window overlooking the city of Susa, the same city she once walked as an ordinary girl. She would place her hand gently over her heart, feeling the steady rhythm beneath the royal garments. The crown rested on her head by day, but she carried something far greater inside. Faith. She still whispered the prayers Mordecai had taught her. She still remembered the stories of her people, of Abraham trusting in unknown lands, of Joseph rising in foreign palaces, of Daniel standing firm in another king's court. She did not yet know that her story would soon mirror theirs. The palace shimmered with beauty, but peace had not yet settled, because beyond the walls of celebration, a shadow was beginning to rise. Not long after Esther's coronation, the king made a decision that would change everything. He promoted a man named Haman. Haman was not merely given a title. He was elevated above all other nobles and officials in the empire. His robes grew richer, his presence more commanding, his influence more visible. When he walked through the palace gates, servants straightened their posture. Officials lowered their eyes. The king ordered that all royal officials at the king's gate must bow down and pay honor to him. It became law. And in Persia, law was absolute. Haman enjoyed this. He walked slowly through the gates each morning, observing the synchronized movement of men bending low before him. The sound of fabric brushing the ground. The silence of submission. The acknowledgement of power. To some, it was merely respect. To Haman, it felt like worship, and pride quietly rooted itself deeper in his heart. Among the many officials stationed at the king's gate stood a familiar figure. Mordecai. He had remained faithful to his duties even after Esther became queen. He did not boast of his connection to her. He did not seek higher position. He simply continued watching, listening, remaining near the place where decisions were made. Each day when Haman approached, something predictable happened. Officials bowed, heads lowered, knees bent, but Mordecai remained standing, not stiffly, not arrogantly, simply upright, his hands folded calmly before him, his eyes steady. At first, the other officials assumed it was an oversight. Perhaps he had not heard the decree. Perhaps he misunderstood. But when it continued day after day, whispers began. "Why do you disobey the king's command?" they asked quietly. Mordecai answered gently, without fear. "I am a Jew." He did not shout. He did not protest loudly. He did not insult Haman. But he would not bow. For Mordecai understood something deeply rooted in his faith. Honor may be given to kings, but worship belongs to God alone. And sometimes obedience to God requires quiet courage in public places. At first, Haman did not notice. Pride often overlooks what does not serve it. But eventually, his eyes caught the unmoving figure at the gate. While others bent low, one man stood tall. Haman paused. His gaze narrowed. He asked the officials nearby, "Who is that man?" They answered carefully, "He is Mordecai, a Jew." The word lingered. A Jew. Haman's expression hardened. It was not simply the refusal that wounded him. It was the identity behind it. His pride had been challenged publicly. And pride, when pierced, bleeds anger. Anger, when nurtured, becomes hatred. Instead of confronting Mordecai directly, instead of punishing one man, Haman allowed something darker to grow inside him. If one Jew refused to bow, then why not remove them all? His thoughts expanded beyond the gate, beyond the city, across the entire empire. His pride demanded more than respect. It demanded eradication. Haman approached King Xerxes with careful calculation. Xerxes' eye. The throne room was vast, its golden pillars stretching upward. Incense drifted slowly through the air. Guards stood silently along the walls. Haman bowed deeply before the king. But this bow was strategic, measured. "My king," he began smoothly, "there's a certain people scattered among the provinces of your kingdom." He did not speak their name. He did not mention Mordecai. He disguised prejudice as concern. Their customs are different from those of all other people. They do not fully comply with the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. The king listened. He did not question deeply. He trusted his advisor. Haman pressed further. "If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them. I will contribute 10,000 talents of silver to the royal treasury." Money, loyalty, unity. He framed destruction as benefit. The king, distracted and unconcerned, removed his signet ring, the symbol of royal authority, and handed it to Haman. A simple gesture, but a powerful one. "With this," the king said, "do with them as you see fit." The ring changed hands, and with it, the fate of an entire people. Haman's plan was now sealed in potential, and the queen still did not know. The royal scribes were summoned at once. They entered the chamber carrying scrolls of parchment, jars of ink, and sharpened reed pens. They sat in long rows at low wooden tables beneath tall palace columns. Haman stood before them, holding the king's signet ring. The authority of Persia rested in his hand. "Write," he commanded. The room fell silent except for the sound of scratching ink. A decree was drafted carefully, legally, officially. It named a specific day. It named a specific people. It declared that on that appointed date, all Jews, young and old, men and women, children and elders, were to be destroyed. Their homes plundered, their possessions taken, their existence erased. The words were cold, precise, unemotional. When the writing was complete, hot wax was pressed onto each scroll. Haman lowered the king's ring into the wax. The royal seal marked it. Once sealed, it could not be revoked. The decision was no longer private anger. It had become law. Messengers mounted the fastest horses in the empire. They rode swiftly across the 127 provinces, through deserts, valleys, cities, and villages. The decree spread like a wind no one could stop, and in the palace courtyard that evening, the king and Haman sat down to drink, while an entire people's fate was sealed in silence. When the decree reached the city of Susa, confusion rippled through the marketplace. A royal messenger stood in the square and read the proclamation aloud. At first, the people did not understand. Then the words settled in. A date, a command, a people marked for destruction. Jewish families froze where they stood. A mother dropped the basket she was holding. A father tightened his grip on his child's hand. An elderly man lowered himself slowly onto a stone bench, his eyes distant. This was not rumor. This was not threat whispered in corners. This was written law. Some citizens watched in silence. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Fear moved quietly through Jewish homes that evening. Doors closed earlier than usual. Lamps burned late into the night. Soft weeping could be heard behind thin walls. The palace remained calm. But outside its gates, hearts were breaking. And inside the palace, the queen still did not know. When Mordecai learned of the decree, the news struck him like a blow. He did not speak at first. He did not argue. He simply tore his clothes, a visible sign of grief. He put on sackcloth made of coarse fabric. He covered his head with ashes. Then he walked into the city streets, crying out with a loud and bitter voice. His sorrow was not quiet. It was raw. It was heavy. He stopped at the king's gate, the same place where he had once stood refusing to bow. But no one wearing sackcloth was allowed inside the palace, so he remained outside, visible, broken, unashamed of his grief. Throughout the empire, other Jewish communities did the same. They fasted. They wept. They lay in sackcloth and ashes. A deep mourning spread like a shadow across the land. Servants inside the palace began to whisper, "The man at the gate, he is crying loudly." The message eventually reached Queen Esther, and her heart tightened. Disturbed by the news of Mordecai's appearance, Esther sent fresh garments to him. She hoped perhaps he would change and come inside to speak with her. But Mordecai refused the clothing. Instead, he sent back something far heavier, a copy of the decree. Through a trusted servant, he explained everything. The date, the command, the seal. And then came the request. "You must go to the king," Mordecai urged. "You must plead for your people." Esther felt the weight of his words settle upon her shoulders. She knew the law. Everyone knew the law. No one could approach the king in the inner court without being summoned. Not a servant. Not a noble. Not even the queen. If anyone entered uninvited, the penalty was death, unless the king extended his golden scepter. And Esther had not been called to the king for 30 days. 30 days of silence. 30 days without invitation. She sent word back to Mordecai. "There is one law for anyone who approaches the king uninvited," she explained carefully. "They will be put to death unless the king extends the golden scepter." Her fear was not weakness. It was reality. To go meant risking everything. Mordecai's reply returned swiftly. It was firm, clear, filled with conviction. "Do not think that because you are in the king's palace, you alone will escape." The words pierced gently but deeply. "If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place." There was faith in that statement, unshaken belief that God would act. "But you and your father's family will perish." Then came the words that would echo through generations. "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" The message lingered in the quiet of Esther's chamber. For such a time as this, the crown no longer felt like decoration. It felt like responsibility. Her comfort now carried purpose. Her position carried weight. She walked slowly across her chamber, her thoughts racing. Memories of her simple home. Memories of Mordecai's steady voice. Memories of the God who preserved his people in foreign lands before. She stopped. She closed her eyes. And in that silence, courage began to rise. She sent her final message. "Go. Gather all the Jews in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do." Then she spoke the words that revealed both fear and faith intertwined. "Then I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." The gentle queen had made her decision, not from impulse, not from pride, but from surrender. And in that surrender, true courage was born. The next step would change everything.